walked through the automatic doors of the Galactic Veterinary Research Station and knew immediately that something was wrong. Red lights flashed along every corridor. Security drones hovered at each intersection, their scanners sweeping back and forth. The usual morning chatter of staff members was gone, replaced by tense silence and worried glances. She stopped at the main security checkpoint. The guard on duty, a young human named Cooper, looked up from his console with obvious relief. "Doctor, thank goodness you're here," said. "We've been trying to reach you for the past hour." "My communicator was off during my morning run," replied. "What happened? Is there a containment breach?" "Not yet, but it's bad. They brought in a creature last night from a raid on the Outer Rim, an illegal fighting ring. The thing they recovered is a stalker." Felt her stomach tighten. She had read about stalkers during her xenobiology training. They were apex predators from one of the most dangerous planets in known space. 4 meters long, covered in armored scales, with claws that could slice through steel and intelligence that some researchers believed rivaled sentient species. No stalker had ever been kept in captivity successfully. Most died fighting rather than accept confinement. "Where is it now?" she asked. "Maximum security containment level 3. Doctor has been running remote assessments all night. He's called a council meeting for this morning. You need to get there now." Didn't waste time. She took the express lift to level 3 and hurried to the observation deck. The room was already filled with staff members, all watching the large view screen that showed the containment cell below. The stalker dominated the screen. Even lying down, it was massive. Its dark scales bore a pattern of lighter scars, hundreds of them covering every visible part of its body. The creature's eyes were closed, but its breathing was rapid and shallow. Every few seconds, its muscles would tense as if preparing to spring up and fight. "Ah, Doctor, you finally arrived." The voice belonged to the station's head veterinarian. He was a tall and with 4 arms that he often used to gesture dramatically when making a point. "I was just explaining to the staff why this creature must be terminated immediately." "Terminated?" moved closer to the screen. "We haven't even examined it properly yet." "I have examined it thoroughly using our automated systems. The creature is severely damaged, both physically and psychologically. Its stress markers are off the scale. It has attacked every automated probe I sent into the cell. During transport here, it nearly breached its container 3 times. This is not an animal we can help. This is a threat that we must eliminate before it harms someone." Studied the image more carefully. The stalker's eyes had opened now, and she could see they were moving constantly, scanning every corner of the cell. The creature shifted its weight, and she noticed how it favored its left rear leg. Old injury, poorly healed. The scars on its hide weren't just marks from fighting. Some showed the distinctive patterns of electric burns. Others were too systematic, too regular to be from combat. "Those scars," said slowly, "they're not all from fighting other creatures, are they?" His mandibles clicked in what she had learned was his species' version of a dismissive gesture. "Does it matter? The creature is dangerous regardless of how it acquired its injuries. I have recommended to Commander Hayes that we proceed with humane termination this afternoon. The Galactic Council representative has already approved the decision." "This afternoon, that's in 6 hours. "Yes, there is no benefit to delay. The creature is suffering, and keeping it alive poses unnecessary risk to this facility and everyone in it." Turned away from the screen to face directly. "I want to examine it myself before any decision is made." The room went silent. Several staff members exchanged glances. One of the junior technicians, a named, spoke up nervously. "Doctor, with respect, that seems very dangerous. Doctor has years of experience with predator species from high-danger worlds. If he says the creature cannot be saved, perhaps we should trust his judgment." "I'm not questioning his judgment about biology," said carefully, "but I have experience with traumatized predators that might be relevant here. On Earth, I worked with animals that had been abused, tortured, forced to fight for entertainment. I've seen what that does to a creature's mind. I've also seen that with proper care and patience, even the most damaged animal can sometimes be reached." His 4 arms crossed in front of his thorax, a clear sign of displeasure. "Doctor, I respect your work on but you must understand the difference in scale. Earth is classified as a Class 7. Difficult, yes, but manageable, is Class 9. The predators from such worlds operate on levels of violence and survival instinct that your Earth predators cannot match. You are, forgive me, projecting your experiences with lesser creatures onto something far more dangerous." "Lesser creatures?" repeated, her voice calm but firm. A wolf can kill a human just as easily as that stalker could. A tiger, a bear, a crocodile. I've worked with all of them after they were rescued from fighting rings and abuse. What I see on that screen isn't a mindless killing machine. It's a traumatized animal exhibiting classic stress behaviors. You see what you want to see because of your emotional attachment to helping damaged creatures, countered. This is precisely why humans should not work with apex predators. You allow sentiment to override logic. Commander Hayes, the station director, had been watching the exchange quietly. He was a species known for their pragmatic approach to problem-solving. Now he raised one hand for silence. Doctor, you believe you can assess this creature more accurately than our automated systems and doctor's expertise. I believe I can offer a perspective that might be valuable, yes, sir. And you understand that approaching this creature carries significant personal risk. I do. Hayes was quiet for a moment, his large eyes blinking slowly as he considered. Finally, he spoke. I will grant you 24 hours to conduct your assessment, Doctor. If you can provide evidence that this creature can be rehabilitated, or at least that there is reason to delay termination, I will hear your case. However, you will use only remote observation during this time. No direct contact. No entering the containment area. And if there is any incident, any sign that the creature is becoming more unstable, the termination order will be carried out immediately. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, sir. Thank you. Made a sound like steam escaping under pressure. This is a waste of time and resources, Commander, but if Doctor wishes to learn the hard way that some creatures are beyond saving, so be it. I will observe her methods with great interest. The meeting broke up, staff members returning to their duties, remained at the observation window watching the stalker below. The creature had returned to its restless packing, moving in a figure-8 pattern that never varied. 3 steps forward, turn left, 3 steps forward, turn right, over and over. Cooper approached her quietly. That was brave, standing up to Doctor like that, or maybe crazy, I'm not sure which. Maybe both, admitted. She pointed at the screen. But look at that packing pattern, it's not random. It's learned behavior, something it did in a smaller space probably for years, and now it can't stop even though the cell is larger. That's not aggression, that's psychological damage. Spent the first 3 hours simply watching. She pulled up every angle of camera feed available, studying the stalker's movements from multiple perspectives. She noted how it moved, where it looked, what sounds made it react. Every detail went into her digital notepad. The packing pattern continued without change. 3 steps, turn, 3 steps, turn. The creature never deviated, but noticed something else. Every 12 minutes, the stalker would stop at the far corner of the cell, lift its head, and smell the air. Then it would resume packing, like clockwork. Another learned behavior, she guessed. Perhaps checking for danger at regular intervals, a survival habit from its time in the fighting rings. She pulled up the medical scans that had been taken when the stalker first arrived. The detail was impressive. Galactic medical technology could scan every bone, every organ, every tissue layer. What saw made her angry. The creature had 17 fractures that had healed incorrectly. Its right foreleg showed signs of having been broken and reset at least 4 times. There were burn marks deep in the tissue, not just on the surface. Electric prods, used repeatedly over months or years. The stalker's digestive system showed evidence of prolonged malnutrition despite the species being known for robust metabolism. This creature had been starved, beaten, and tortured systematically. Finding anything useful, his voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. These medical scans show extensive abuse, said without turning around. This creature was tortured. Yes, we are aware. The fighting rings are brutal. They condition the animals to be aggressive through pain and deprivation, which is precisely why this stalker cannot be rehabilitated. Its mind has been shaped by violence. It knows nothing else. That's not how trauma works, replied. She finally turned to face him. Pain doesn't just make creatures more violent, it makes them more afraid. They learn to expect harm from every interaction. Look at the stress markers in these scans, the elevated cortisol levels, the hyperactive amygdala response. This isn't an aggressive predator. This is a terrified one. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You are seeing patterns that confirm your existing beliefs, Doctor. This is called confirmation bias. You want to save the creature, so you interpret everything as evidence that it can be saved. And you've already decided it should die, so you interpret everything as evidence that it's too dangerous, countered. At least let me finish my assessment before we debate conclusions. The studied her for a moment, then nodded. 24 hours, as Commander Hayes said, but I want to show you something first. He moved to the control panel and pulled up a video file. This is from the transport ship that brought the stalker here. Watch. The video showed the stalker in a smaller containment unit, the kind used for high-risk cargo. The creature was thrashing against the walls, roaring, slamming its body into the reinforced barriers. Crew members backed away as alarms sounded. The violence was shocking, primal, terrifying. You see, said, this is what we are dealing with, raw, uncontrolled aggression. Watch the video again more carefully this time. Pause it there, go back 5 seconds. His expression skeptical. Look at what happens just before the stalker starts thrashing. Someone walks past the container carrying a shock rod. See that? The crew member isn't even pointing it at the stalker, just walking by with it in his hand. But watch the creature's reaction. In slow motion, it was clear. The stalker saw the shock rod, its eyes fixed on it. Then the panic response began. The thrashing, the roaring, all of it was a reaction to seeing the tool that had been used to hurt it countless times before. It's not attacking, said quietly. It's having a panic attack. Was silent for a long moment. Even if you are correct, Doctor, a creature that responds to minor stimuli with such violent panic is still dangerous. Perhaps more dangerous than one acting on hunting instinct. Only if we don't help it learn that the shock rods are gone, that the pain has stopped, that it's safe now. And how do you propose to teach that to a creature that cannot understand language and sees every living thing as a potential threat? The same way I would with any traumatized animal. Patience, consistency, building trust one small step at a time. Turned away from the screen. You have 18 hours remaining, Doctor. I hope you find something more concrete than speculation about panic attacks. The Council representative requires hard evidence, not theories based on Earth animal psychology. After he left, returned to her observations. She spent the next several hours reviewing every piece of data available. The stalker's original capture report, reports from the fighting ring raids, witness statements from freed prisoners who had been forced to watch the fights. One statement caught her attention. A merchant who had been held prisoner described the stalker as the sad one. When questioned further, he explained that unlike the other fighting creatures, which roared and postured between matches, this stalker would retreat to the corner of its cage and remain completely still. It fought when forced to, with deadly efficiency, but showed no enthusiasm for violence. Some of the other prisoners believed the creature was dying of heartbreak. Felt something tighten in her chest. She had seen that same behavior in abused dogs, in traumatized horses, in broken creatures of all kinds. The shutdown, the emotional withdrawal, the loss of will to live. This stalker had survived years of horror, but at what cost to its spirit? She looked at the time. 16 hours left. She needed something concrete, something that would prove the stalker could respond to positive treatment. Made a decision. She accessed the containment controls and found the feeding system. The station's automated feeders would drop pre-measured nutrition packets into the cell at scheduled times. The stalker had refused to eat since arriving, had noted this as further evidence of the creature's declining condition, but knew that many traumatized animals refused food in new environments. It was a stress response, not a sign of giving up. She modified the feeding schedule. Instead of having the automated system drop food, she would deliver it personally. What are you planning? Cooper had appeared beside her. He seemed to have a habit of doing that. I'm going to feed the stalker myself. Doctor said no direct contact. I won't be going inside the cell. There's a feeding port. I can place the food just inside the barrier, the stalker can see me do it, and then I'll step back where it can observe me from a safe distance. Direct contact with me, but not with the creature. It fits the rules Commander Hayes set. Looked doubtful but didn't argue. When do you want to try this? Now the stalker hasn't eaten in over 30 hours. It must be hungry. Gathered a food packet from the medical supply room. The nutrition paste smelled terrible to her human nose, but the specifications said it was formulated for metabolism. She carried it to the containment level, trailing behind her as an observer. The feeding port was a small opening with triple security locks. Unlocked it slowly, making sure her movements were visible on the cameras. She wanted everything documented. The stalker was in mid-pace when the locks clicked open. It froze instantly, head swinging toward the sound. Its eyes, a deep amber color, locked onto through the transparent barrier. For a moment neither moved, kept her breathing steady, her posture relaxed. She had learned long ago that animals could sense fear and tension. If she wanted the stalker to learn that she was not a threat, she had to believe it herself. Slowly, carefully, she placed the food packet just inside the feeding port. Then she stepped back 3 meters, into clear view of the stalker, and sat down on the floor. The creature watched her. Its nostrils flared, scenting the food, but it didn't move toward it. Instead, it lowered itself into a defensive crouch, muscles coiled, ready to spring in any direction. Understood, the stalker had learned that food was sometimes used as bait, that letting your guard down to eat could mean pain or worse. It was waiting for the trap to spring. "It's okay," said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words, but hopping her tone would convey safety. "No one is going to hurt you, not anymore. The food is yours, no tricks." 5 minutes passed, then 10. The stalker never took its eyes off her, remained sitting, calm and still, making no demands. Finally, after 15 minutes, the creature made a decision. It rose from its crouch and backed away from the food, retreating to the far corner of the cell. The message was clear. It would not approach the food while she was present. Spoke quietly through the comm system. "Doctor, it's been 20 minutes. I don't think it's going to eat." "That's okay," replied. "This was only the first attempt. Trust takes time." She stood slowly, retrieved the food packet, and sealed the feeding port. The stalker watched Ev return to the containment level 4 hours later with another food packet. This time, she moved with deliberate purpose. She wanted to establish a pattern, something the stalker could learn to predict. Animals found comfort in routine, especially traumatized ones who needed to rebuild their sense of safety. She followed the same procedure as before. Unlocked the feeding port slowly, placed the food inside, stepped back 3 meters, and sat down. The stalker, which had been resting in the corner, rose immediately. Its eyes tracked her every movement. This time brought something else. She pulled out a small and began making notes, deliberately dividing her attention between the device and the creature. She wanted to appear less threatening, less focused on the stalker. Predators often interpreted direct staring as a challenge or threat. The stalker watched her for 5 minutes, then 10. Its nostrils flared repeatedly, smelling the food. Kept her eyes mostly on the, only glancing up occasionally. She talked softly, narrating her notes as if the creature could understand. "Your stress markers are elevated but stable. Heart rate approximately 140 beats per minute, which is high for your species at rest. Breathing shallow but regular. You're favoring your left rear leg. That old injury must hurt. I wish I could help with that." 20 minutes passed. The stalker shifted its weight, a small movement but significant. It took 1 step toward the food, then stopped. Its eyes darted between and the food packet. Held perfectly still. This was progress. The creature was considering approaching while she was present. That meant curiosity was starting to overcome fear, at least slightly. But the stalker didn't move closer. Instead, it settled back into its corner, watching and waiting. Remained for another 10 minutes, then retrieved the food and left. As she sealed the feeding port, she noticed the creature's eyes following her departure. "Small steps," she told, who had been monitoring from the security station. "It took 1 step toward the food. That's more than this morning." "Doctor is asking for an update on your progress," said. "He wants to meet with you in 1 hour." Nodded. She knew this meeting was coming. She spent the next hour compiling her observations into a coherent report. When she arrived at the conference room, was already there, along with Commander Hayes and 2 council representatives she hadn't seen before. "Doctor, please present your findings," Commander Hayes said without preamble. Activated the wall display and brought up her documentation. "Over the past 14 hours, I've conducted detailed behavioral observations of the stalker. What I've found supports my initial assessment. This creature is exhibiting classic trauma responses, not natural predatory aggression." She showed them video clips she had compiled, the stalker's packing pattern, its reaction to various stimuli, the way it checked its surroundings every 12 minutes, the panic response to the shock rod from the transport video. Every behavior pattern suggests learned helplessness combined with hypervigilance. The creature expects pain and is constantly prepared to defend itself. However, it has not initiated any aggressive action that wasn't preceded by a fear stimulus. One of the council representatives, a female named Administrator, spoke up. You say it has not initiated aggression, but the transport records show multiple attack attempts. With respect, Administrator, those weren't attacks. They were panic responses triggered by specific stimuli. Watch this clip again. Replayed the transport video, highlighting the moment the crew member walked past with the shock rod. The violence begins here immediately after the creature sees the tool used to torture it. This is a conditioned fear response, not hunting behavior. Interjected. Even if we accept your interpretation, Doctor, the practical result is the same. The creature is dangerous. It responds to perceived threats with extreme violence. In a facility with dozens of staff members, any number of innocent actions could trigger such a response. Someone carrying the wrong tool, making an unexpected movement, any minor stimulus could cause a catastrophic incident. That's true now, admitted. But trauma responses can be modified through systematic desensitization and trust building. I've seen it work with Earth predators. There's no reason it shouldn't work here. No reason except time, Administrator said. Rehabilitating a traumatized predator takes months or years. We don't have that luxury. This facility has limited resources and hundreds of other creatures requiring care. We cannot dedicate extensive time and personnel to one animal, no matter how sympathetic its situation. I'm not asking for extensive resources, just time and permission to continue my current approach. I've already seen small improvements. The stalker is beginning to respond to routine. This morning it wouldn't even consider approaching food while I was present. This afternoon it took a step toward it. That's progress. One step, said flatly. In 14 hours of observation. At this rate, it will take weeks before the creature trusts you enough for basic interaction, and months before it could be considered safe. We need faster results. Commander Hayes had been listening quietly. Now he leaned forward. Doctor, I granted you 24 hours. You have 10 hours remaining. In that time, can you demonstrate concrete progress? Not just behavioral observations, but actual interaction that proves the creature can respond to positive treatment. Felt the weight of that question. 10 hours. Could she reach a creature in 10 hours that had spent years learning that every living thing meant pain? It seemed impossible. But she thought of all the animals she had helped on Earth, creatures that everyone else had given up on. I can try, she said simply. That's not enough, Administrator stated. Try is not proof. Give us specific criteria. What will you achieve in the next 10 hours that will demonstrate this creature can be rehabilitated? Thought quickly. I will get the stalker to eat in my presence. Not just approach the food, but actually eat while I am observing from outside the barrier. That will prove it can override its fear conditioning enough to engage in a basic survival behavior while a potential threat is nearby. It's a fundamental first step in trust building. The council representatives exchanged glances. Some mandibles clicked skeptically. Very well, Administrator said. You have 10 hours, Doctor. If the creature eats in your presence before that deadline, we will grant you additional time to continue your rehabilitation program. If not, the termination order will be carried out. No extensions, no appeals. Is that understood? Understood. The meeting ended. As the others filed out, Commander Hayes paused beside. That was a very specific promise you made, he said quietly. I hope you can deliver on it. So do I, sir. Returned to the observation deck. She had 10 hours to achieve what normally took weeks or months. The challenge seemed overwhelming, but she pushed the doubt aside. She had to focus on the stalker, on understanding what it needed. She reviewed her notes again. The creature had been in the fighting rings for at least 3 years based on the scarring patterns. 3 years of pain, violence, and fear. Every positive instinct it might have had was buried under layers of trauma. How could she reach through all of that in 10 hours? An idea came to her. She pulled up the stalker's file and found what she was looking for. The original capture report included environmental data from the fighting ring. Temperature, humidity, atmospheric composition. She compared it to the current settings in the containment cell. The cell was kept at standard galactic facility temperature, which was comfortable for most species. But it was 10 degrees cooler than the fighting ring environment. Not enough to be harmful, but enough to be noticeably different from what the stalker had been accustomed to. Accessed the environmental controls and raised the temperature in the cell by 8 degrees. Then she adjusted the lighting, dimming it slightly to match the records from the fighting ring. She wasn't trying to recreate that horrible place. She was trying to reduce the number of unfamiliar elements that were causing the stalker stress. Next, she reviewed the feeding schedule. The fighting rings fed their creatures at irregular intervals, deliberately keeping them hungry and unpredictable. Couldn't change the past, but she could establish a reliable pattern now. She set up a feeding schedule. Every 4 hours, she would bring food. Same routine, same procedure, absolute consistency. She returned to the containment level with another food packet. Third attempt. This time, she moved more slowly, making her actions even more predictable. Unlock the port, place the food, step back, sit down. The stalker watched, noticed its breathing seemed slightly slower than before. The environmental changes might be helping, or maybe the creature was simply exhausted from constant vigilance. "I know you're scared," said softly. "I know every instinct you have is screaming that this is a trick, that if you let your guard down, something terrible will happen, but I promise you nothing bad is going to happen, not while I'm here, not anymore." The stalker's ears twitched. It was the first time had seen them move in response to her voice. Another small sign. The creature was listening, processing, starting to recognize that this strange human might be different from the beings that had hurt it. But it still didn't approach the food. Remained for 20 minutes, then left as before. 7 hours remained until her deadline. She needed a new strategy. Found her in the staff break room 2 hours later. "You haven't slept in over 24 hours, he observed. "I'll sleep when this is done." "Doctor, can I ask you something? Why are you fighting so hard for this creature? I mean, I understand wanting to help animals. That's your job. But you're putting your whole career on the line for one stalker that nobody except you thinks can be saved." Was quiet for a moment. "When I was in veterinary school, I did an internship at an animal rescue facility. They brought in a dog that had been used in fighting rings. Everyone said it was too dangerous, too damaged, that it would have to be put down. But I saw something in its eyes, not violence, just fear and pain and this desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would help." "Did you save it?" "I tried. For 3 weeks, I worked with that dog every single day, and on the 21st day, it finally let me touch it, just for a second, but it was enough. It learned that not all humans bring pain. 6 months later, that dog was adopted by a family with children. It lived 9 more happy years." "And you see that same hope in the stalker?" "I see a creature that's still fighting to survive despite everything that's been done to it. That takes strength, that takes courage, and it deserves a chance." Nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I hope you succeed. I'll be monitoring the feeds. Call if you need anything." Returned to the observation deck and prepared for her 4th feeding attempt. 5 hours until deadline. This time she brought something extra. A small audio device playing recorded sounds from its natural environment. She had downloaded them from the station's xenobiology database. Flowing water, wind through vegetation, the calls of other creatures native to that world, activated the audio device before approaching the feeding port. The sounds have filled the containment area. Water flowing over rocks, the rustle of wind through strange vegetation, the distant calls of creatures that had never been domesticated or studied up close. The stalker's reaction was immediate and dramatic. Its head lifted, its ears swiveled forward. The constant packing stopped. For the first time since arriving at the facility, the creature stood completely still, just listening. Felt her breath catch. This was it. This was the key. The stalker wasn't beyond reach. It just needed to remember what life had been like before the pain, before the fighting rings, before everything good had been stripped away. She moved through her routine slowly, unlocking the port, placing the food, stepping back. But this time, she didn't sit down immediately. She stood for a moment, letting the stalker see her clearly while the sounds of it played softly in the background. "Do you remember?" asked quietly. "Do you remember running through places that looked like the pictures in these sounds, when you were free, when you chose where to go and what to do?" The stalker's eyes met hers. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, then sat down slowly and fell silent, letting the recorded sounds speak for her. 5 minutes passed. The stalker took 2 steps toward the food, then stopped. Its nostrils flared, scenting not just the food but the air itself, as if trying to find the source of those familiar sounds. Stayed perfectly still. 10 minutes. The stalker moved closer, 4 steps now. It was within 2 meters of the food. Could see the hunger in its eyes, the way its muscles trembled slightly with the effort of restraint. Every instinct told it to eat, but the learned fear was still too strong. 15 minutes. The creature lowered its head, stretching its neck toward the food without moving its body closer. Realized it was trying to reach the packet without fully committing to approach. A compromise between hunger and caution. 20 minutes, the stalker suddenly pulled back and returned to its corner. His heart sank. She had been so close, but she understood. The creature had reached the limit of what it could overcome in one session. Pushing harder would only reinforce its fear. She retrieved the food and left, leaving the audio device playing. Through the observation screens, she watched the stalker settle into a resting position, head raised, eyes closed, just listening to the sounds of home. 3 hours until deadline. Knew she needed a different approach. Getting the stalker to eat in her presence required breaking down its fear to the point where hunger could override caution. But maybe she was thinking about this wrong. Maybe the goal wasn't to make the creature ignore her presence. Maybe it was to make her presence feel safe. She had an idea. It was risky, possibly against the rules Commander Hayes had set, but she was running out of time. Went to the feeding station and prepared something special. The standard nutrition packets were efficient but bland. They provided everything a stalker needed to survive, but nothing extra. She checked the species' dietary requirements and found that in the wild, stalkers preferred fresh meat from aquatic creatures native to their world. The station didn't have anything but they did have frozen samples from various worlds in cold storage for research purposes. Found something close to the chemical composition listed in the stalker's dietary profile. A fish-like creature from a Class 8 world, large enough that one specimen would provide a substantial meal. She prepared it carefully, thawing it under controlled conditions, making sure it was safe for consumption. The smell was strong, distinctly meaty in a way that the nutrition paste wasn't. If this didn't trigger the stalker's appetite, nothing would. 2 hours until deadline. Carried the prepared meat to the containment level, saw her coming, and his eyes widened. Is that what I think it is? Real food, as close to what the stalker would eat in the wild as I can provide. Doctor is going to say you're breaking protocol. The nutrition packets are specifically formulated. The nutrition packets are designed to keep a creature alive. I'm trying to give this one a reason to want to be alive. There's a difference. She approached the feeding port. The audio device was still playing sounds. The stalker was alert immediately, rising from its resting position as soon as it heard the locks on the feeding port disengage. Placed the meat just inside the barrier. The smell must have been overwhelming to the stalker's sensitive nose because its reaction was instant. The creature's entire body tensed, its pupils dilated. Could actually see it start to salivate. She stepped back and sat down as usual, but this time she spoke more. That's real food, not the processed stuff they've been giving you. I know it's been years since you had anything that actually tasted good, that reminded you of hunting and eating and being full and satisfied. It's yours, no tricks, I promise. The stalker took one step forward, then another. Its eyes never left the meat. Could see the internal struggle playing out in its body language. Hunger was winning against fear, but the fear was still there, still strong. Another step. The creature was close now, close enough that could see the individual scars on its hide, could count the poorly healed fractures in its legs. This magnificent predator had endured so much pain, had survived when survival seemed impossible. The stalker lowered its head toward the meat. Its jaws opened slightly. Then it looked up at, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. There was intelligence in those amber eyes. Real intelligence, not just animal instinct. The stalker wasn't just deciding whether to eat. It was deciding whether to trust. Whether to believe that this strange human might be different from all the other beings that had brought nothing but suffering. Held her breath. She didn't move, didn't speak, just met the creature's gaze with quiet steadiness. She tried to project every bit of safety and care she could through that look. The stalker made its decision. It lowered its head and took the meat in its jaws. Not quickly, not with the desperate gulp of a starving animal. Slowly, deliberately, maintaining eye contact with the entire time. Then it backed up 3 steps and settled down to eat, still watching her. Felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them away and activated her comm unit. Are you recording this? Every second, Doctor, you did it. The stalker is eating in your presence. Get Commander Hayes and the council representatives. Tell them I've met the deadline criteria. The stalker has demonstrated trust behavior. For the next 10 minutes sat perfectly still while the creature ate. It finished the entire portion, something it had never done with the nutrition packets. When it was done, the stalker didn't retreat to its corner. Instead, it remained in place, watching with what she could only describe as curiosity. Commander Hayes arrived with Administrator, and they stood at the observation window, watching in silence. "As you can see," said quietly through the comm system, not wanting to disturb the moment, "the stalker has eaten a full meal while I remained in visual contact. This demonstrates significant progress in trust building. The creature has learned that my presence does not mean harm." Administrator studied the scene carefully. "I see a creature that was hungry enough to overcome its fear temporarily. That does not prove rehabilitation is possible." With respect, Administrator, it proves exactly that. Fear conditioning can be overcome. This is the foundation we build on. From here, we can gradually increase positive interactions, reduce stress responses, and help the creature learn that safety is possible. Spoke up. "I must admit, Doctor, this is more progress than I anticipated. However, I remain concerned about the long-term viability of this approach. Even if the creature learns to tolerate your presence, what about others? What about the dozens of staff members in this facility? You cannot personally handle every interaction for the rest of this animal's life." "No, but I can establish the baseline. Once the stalker trusts me, I can gradually introduce other people, using the same patient, consistent approach. It will take time, but it's possible." Commander Hayes crossed his arms. A gesture had learned meant he was thinking carefully. "Doctor, you have met the criteria you proposed. The creature has eaten in your presence. However, Administrator raises a valid point. Eating once is not the same as being rehabilitated. I want to see continued progress before committing more resources to this project." "What kind of progress?" asked. "I want to see the creature respond to basic training protocols. If it can learn to follow simple commands, move to specific areas of the containment cell on request, demonstrate impulse control, then we can consider this a viable rehabilitation. But if it remains unpredictable and unresponsive to anything beyond basic trust with you alone, then we are simply postponing the inevitable." Administrator nodded. "I agree with Commander Hayes. Doctor, you have earned more time. 1 week. In 7 days, we will conduct a formal evaluation of the stalker's progress. If it can demonstrate trainability and safe interaction protocols, the rehabilitation program may continue. If not, the termination order will be reinstated. No further extensions." 7 days. It was more than had dared hope for, but still an incredibly short time to train a traumatized apex predator. She looked at the stalker, which was still watching her from its position near where the food had been. "I accept those terms," said. 1 week, I'll prove this creature deserves to live." After the officials left, came down to the containment level. He found still sitting outside the barrier, the stalker still watching her. "That was intense," said. "You really think you can train it in a week?" "I have to. If I don't, they'll kill it. And after everything it's survived, it deserves better than that." "What's your plan?" Stood slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. The stalker's eyes tracked her, but it didn't rise or show signs of alarm. That alone was progress. "First, I establish more trust. Then I start with the most basic training. Target training, probably, teaching it to touch a specific object on command. It's simple, builds on natural curiosity, and gives measurable results. From there, we build complexity gradually." "In 7 days." "In 7 days, confirmed." She looked at the stalker one more time before leaving. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start the real work." As she walked away, she heard a sound that made her stop. It was soft, almost inaudible. The stalker had made a vocalization, not a roar, not a threat sound, just a quiet noise somewhere between a chirp and a rumble. Recognized it from her research. It was a contact call. The sound young stalkers made to there the next morning arrived at the facility before dawn. She had spent the night researching target training methods and adapting them for a stalker. The principle was simple enough. Teach the creature to touch a specific object when prompted, reward the behavior, and gradually build more complex commands from that foundation. The challenge was that traditional training relied on positive reinforcement through treats. But the stalker had spent years associating food with manipulation and pain. She would need to find other rewards that meant something to the creature. She started by spending the first 2 hours simply being present. She sat outside the barrier, working on her, occasionally speaking softly to the stalker about nothing in particular. Just her voice, calm and consistent, letting the creature get used to her as part of its environment. The stalker watched her for the first hour, then gradually relaxed. It paced less, rested more. By the end of the second hour, it had settled into a comfortable position and was actually grooming itself, running its rough tongue over its scales to clean them. Self-maintenance behavior was a good sign. It meant the creature felt safe enough to focus on something other than survival. On the third hour, introduced the target. It was a simple rod with a bright orange ball at the end, easily visible and distinct from anything else in the environment. She held it up where the stalker could see it through the barrier, then slowly inserted it through the feeding port. The stalker's eyes fixed on the object immediately. Its ears swiveled forward, could see the curiosity in its posture. The creature stood and approached cautiously, stopping a meter away from the target. "Good," said softly. "That's very good, you're interested. That's all I need right now, just interest." She held the target steady for 5 minutes, then slowly it. The stalker watched it disappear through the feeding port, head tilted slightly. Repeated the process 3 more times that morning, just showing the target and letting the creature look at it. No demands, no expectations, just building familiarity. By afternoon, the stalker was approaching closer to the target each time it appeared. By evening, it was sniffing the orange ball, nostrils flaring as it tried to understand what this strange object was. Ended the day satisfied. Tomorrow, she would ask for the first touch. Day 2 began with the same routine. Presence, voice, calm energy. When introduced the target, the stalker approached immediately now, comfortable with this part of the pattern. This time did something different. She moved the target slightly, just a small movement to the left. The stalker's eyes followed the motion. Without thinking, it reached out with one forepaw and batted at the orange ball. Yes, couldn't contain her excitement. Good, that's exactly right. She immediately produced a piece of the fresh meat she had prepared, the kind the stalker had eaten 2 days ago. She placed it in the feeding port. The creature took it quickly, maintaining eye contact with the whole time. They repeated the exercise 15 times that afternoon. By the end, the stalker was reliably touching the target with its paw every time presented it. The foundation was established. Now they could build on it. Days 3 and 4 focused on refining the behavior, taught the stalker to touch the target only when she gave a specific verbal cue. At first, the creature touched it every time it appeared, eager for the reward. But gradually it began to understand. Touch only when the human made a certain sound. Wait otherwise. By day 5, the stalker was responding to basic commands. Touch the target when cued. Return to a specific corner of the cell. Sit still for 30 seconds. Simple behaviors, but they demonstrated something crucial. The creature could learn. It could control its impulses. It could work cooperatively with a human. Introduced a new element on day 6. Cooper. She asked him to stand beside her during a training session, just observing. The stalker noticed immediately. Its stress markers elevated slightly, but not dangerously. It watched warily, but when gave the training cues, the creature still responded. "It's tolerating your presence," explained to. "That's huge progress. A week ago, any unfamiliar person would have triggered a panic response." "Can I try giving a command?" asked. Hesitated, then nodded. "Use the same tone I do. Say target when you want it to touch the ball." Held up the target and said the command. The stalker looked at him, then at, uncertainty clear in its body language. Remained calm, giving no signal. After a long moment, the stalker made its decision. It approached the target and touched it carefully with one claw. Good couldn't hide his amazement. It actually listened to me. Rewarded the behavior immediately. It's learning that humans in general can be safe, not just me. That's what we need for long-term success. Day 7 arrived too quickly. The formal evaluation was scheduled for that afternoon. Commander Hayes, administrator, and 2 independent xenobiology experts from the Galactic Council would all be present to assess the stalker's progress. Spent the morning running through every command they had practiced, making sure the stalker was comfortable with each one. The creature performed beautifully, responding to cues with increasing confidence, but knew the real test would be different. They wouldn't just want to see training responses. They would want to see something more. The evaluation team gathered in the observation deck at precisely 2 in the afternoon. Stood before them, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "Thank you for coming," she began. Over the past week, I have worked intensively with the stalker to establish trust and basic training protocols. I would like to demonstrate what we have accomplished. She moved to the containment controls and activated the communication system. Then she held up the target where the stalker could see it from below. "Target," she said clearly. The stalker, which had been resting in the corner, rose immediately. It approached the barrier and touched the orange ball with its paw, rewarded the behavior. She ran through the sequence of commands they had practiced. Each time the stalker responded correctly. Touch the target, return to corner, sit, wait. The creature performed flawlessly. Watched with his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Impressive, Doctor. The creature has clearly learned to respond to your commands. But I have a question. Can it demonstrate impulse control in the presence of a reward it wants?" Understood what he was asking. You want to see if it can resist immediate gratification when commanded to wait. Exactly. Training is one thing. True behavioral modification means the creature can override its predatory instincts when necessary. Nodded. This was a test she had been preparing for. She retrieved a piece of fresh meat, the largest portion she had available. The smell was strong even to her human nose. It must have been overwhelming to the stalker. She placed the meat in the feeding port, clearly visible. The stalker's eyes locked onto it immediately. Its body tensed. Every instinct was screaming at it to take the food. "Wait," said firmly. The creature trembled. It took one step toward the meat, then stopped. Its eyes darted between the food, and she held up one hand in a stop gesture they had practiced. "Wait." 30 seconds passed. The stalker remained frozen, every muscle taut with the effort of restraint. Could see the internal battle playing out. Want versus control. Instinct versus learned behavior. 1 minute, the creature sat down, still staring at the meat but no longer trying to approach. It was choosing to wait, choosing to trust that obeying the command would lead to something good. "Good," said softly. "Very good, take it." The stalker surged forward and claimed the meat, eating quickly but still watching, as if to make sure this wasn't a trick. Administrator leaned forward, studying the scene intently. That was remarkable. The creature demonstrated clear impulse control and command response. But I have one more test, Doctor, something that will prove whether this rehabilitation is truly viable. Felt her stomach tighten. "What test?" "I want you to enter the containment cell with the creature. No barriers between you. If your training is effective, if the stalker has truly learned that humans are not threats, it should tolerate your presence in its space without incident." The room went silent. His mandibles clicked sharply. "That is extremely dangerous, Administrator. We have no precedent for direct physical contact with a stalker." Which is precisely why it is the ultimate test. Doctor has argued from the beginning that this creature is not inherently dangerous, that its aggression was learned through trauma. If she is correct, she should be able to enter that cell safely. If she is not, then we will have our answer about whether rehabilitation is truly possible. Commander Hayes looked troubled. "Doctor, you understand that we cannot order you to do this. It is your choice. If you decline, we can base our decision on the training demonstration we have already observed." Looked down at the containment cell. The stalker had finished eating and was watching the observation window as if it knew something significant was happening. In just 1 week, this creature had gone from a terrified, violent survivor to an animal that could learn, could trust, could choose cooperation over aggression. But entering the cell was a completely different level of risk. If she was wrong, if she had misread the stalker's behavior, she could die in seconds. The creature was massive, powerful, built by evolution to be a perfect predator. But if she was right, if that broken soul she had seen beneath the scars was truly healing, this could prove that even the most traumatized creature deserved a second chance. "I'll do it," said quietly. "I'll enter the cell." Stood up immediately. "Doctor, please reconsider. This is too dangerous." "Everything about this week has been dangerous," replied. "But that creature down there has trusted me. It has done everything I asked, even when every instinct told it not to. The least I can do is show the same trust in return." She turned to the evaluation team. "I have 2 conditions. First, all automated defense systems must be disabled. If the stalker senses weapons targeting it, that could trigger a fear response. Second, I want a manual emergency override available, but only to be used if I am clearly in danger, not just if the stalker approaches me." Understood. Commander Hayes nodded slowly. Agreed, but doctor, if anything goes wrong. Then you were right and I was wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. Took the express lift down to the containment level. She stood before the cell entrance, watching the stalker through the transparent barrier. The creature was packing now, sensing the tension in the facility, the change in routine. She activated the audio device, playing the sounds that had helped so much during the first days. The creature's ears swiveled toward the familiar noise. Its packing slowed. Placed her hand on the door release, took a deep breath, and unsealed the containment cell. The door slid open, stepped through. The door closed behind her with a solid click that seemed impossibly loud in the suddenly small space. The stalker stopped packing immediately. It turned to face her fully, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. No barrier between them now, just a human and an apex predator from one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. Moved slowly, her body language calm and non-threatening. She angled herself to appear smaller, less challenging. She had no target, no food, no tools, just herself and the trust they had built over 7 days. "Hello," she said softly. "Remember me? I'm the one who brought you food, who played the sounds from home, who taught you that not everything has to hurt." The stalker took one step toward her, then another, held perfectly still. The observation deck above was silent, everyone watching with held breath. 3 meters, 2 meters. The creature was close enough now that could feel the heat from its body, could hear the soft huff of its breathing. Close enough to kill her with one swipe of those massive claws. The stalker lowered its head, bringing its face level with. Its amber eyes studied her intently. Could see old scars around those eyes, marks of pain endured. But she also saw intelligence, recognition, and something that might have been gratitude. Slowly, carefully, extended her hand. Palm down, non-threatening, just as she had done from outside the barrier so many times. The stalker watched her hand approach. Every muscle in its body was tense, ready to react to any threat, but wasn't a threat, she never had been. The creature extended one massive forepaw, claws retracted. Gently, so gently that barely felt the pressure, it touched her palm with its paw. Contact, trust, connection. Heard voices from above, excited and amazed, but she stayed focused on the stalker. She moved her other hand slowly and placed it on the creature's shoulder. The muscles beneath trembled slightly, but the stalker didn't pull away. "You're safe now," whispered. "No more fighting, no more pain, you're safe." The stalker made that same soft sound she had heard before the contact call. Then, in a gesture that seemed impossible, the massive predator lowered itself to the ground and rested its head near its feet. Not threatening, not aggressive, just tired, so very tired. Sat down beside it, her hand still on its shoulder. And for the first time in years, the stalker closed its eyes and rested in the presence of another living being without fear. In the observation deck above, Administrator was the first to speak. "I have seen enough. This creature can clearly be rehabilitated. Doctor has proven her thesis beyond any reasonable doubt. The termination order is officially canceled." Over the following weeks, continued the rehabilitation program. The stalker, which she officially named Sentinel for its watchful nature, made steady progress. It learned to interact safely with other staff members. It demonstrated intelligence and emotional capacity that amazed the entire research community. Humbled by the experience, began collaborating with to develop new protocols for traumatized. He admitted publicly that his species had overlooked important aspects of animal psychology, and that humanity's approach had valuable lessons to teach the wider galaxy. The Galactic Council established new guidelines for evaluating traumatized creatures, based directly on its work with Sentinel. Facilities across dozens of systems began implementing her methods, and countless creatures that would have been terminated were given chances at rehabilitation instead. Sentinel could never return to. Too many years in captivity had made it impossible to survive in the wild. But it found a new purpose at the research station, serving as an educational ambassador. Scientists from across the galaxy came to study it, to learn from it, to understand that even the most fearsome predator could heal when given compassion and patience. Received numerous awards and recognition for her work, but the moment she treasured most came 3 months after that first week of training. She was sitting in Sentinel's new, expanded habitat, reviewing research notes. The stalker approached quietly and settled down beside her, close enough that she could feel its warmth. Observing from a distance, watched in amazement. I still can't believe you can just sit there like that. Smiled, running her hand over Sentinel's hide. Trust is a powerful thing. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the apex predator with claws and teeth. Sometimes it's the willingness to look past the scars and see the soul underneath. Sentinel made its soft contact sound and knew that broken soul had finally found its way to something like peace. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not proving she was right, not the recognition or awards. Just knowing that one creature that had suffered terribly now had a chance to know safety, to know kindness, to know that the pain had finally ended. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity didn't see threats to be eliminated. They saw broken souls that deserved a chance to heal. And sometimes that compassion was the strongest force of all. Mothers, the sound of a creature reaching out, trying to connect. Smiled, tomorrow, she promised. I'll see you tomorrow. Maybe, just maybe, a reminder of home would help. Why movement? As turned to leave, she saw something in those amber eyes. Not hatred, not bloodlust. Just exhaustion, fear, and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of confusion at this strange human who offered food without pain. 18 hours to go, murmured to herself. We'll try again soon. So what are you going to do? Took a deep breath. I'm going to do what I do best. I'm going to watch, learn, and try to understand what that creature needs. And I'm going to prove that even the most dangerous predator in the galaxy deserves a chance at healing. She pulled up a chair and settled in for what she knew would be a very long day. The stalker continued its endless packing below and began to take notes, determined to find the broken soul beneath those terrible scars.